Hello, good morning children. Today in this video I am going to explain class 7 history 7th chapter tribes, nomads and settled communities part 2. In the previous video, first video, I have explained what are the different types of tribes which are located in different parts of our India and their names we have discussed. Now we are going to learn about the nomads and how nomads and mobile people lived. What were their living styles, how they lived. You are going to learn in this video. Okay, nomads means the people you know already. The people who move from one place to another place with their animals. They were called as nomads. Let's see. Nomadic pastoralists moved over long distances with their animals. They lived on milk and other pastoral products. So with their animals, they moved from one place to another place for long distances. And they lived on these animal products. What are the animal products? Wool, milk, ghee, yes or not? Eggs, like that. Okay, they lived on these pastoral products. From animals we will get, and meat also. We will get all these things now. So they lived on these things only. They also exchanged wool, ghee, etc. with the settled agriculturalists for grains, cloth, utensils and other products. So they produced these things and they exchanged with the agriculturalists with what the things they used, what they wanted. So with these only we can't survive. These people, they want clothes, they want grains and utensils they want for cooking, all those things. For those things they exchanged these things with them and they live like that. They bought and sold these goods as they moved from one place to another. So they bought grains and they sold this milk, wool and ghee to other people. Moved from one place to another, transporting them on their animals. By the time transportation also they used it to done on their animals only. The Banjaras were the most important trader nomads. So in them, the Banjaras were famous for these Banjaras were famous for this trading. They were experts in nomadic life. Their caravan was called Tanda. Their caravan was called as Tanda. Caravan means groups of people moving from one place to another place on the animals. That caravan was called as Tanda. Sultan Alauddin Khilji used the Banjaras to transport grain to the city markets. So Sultan Alauddin Khilji, this Mughal emperor, Khilji dynasty king, he used these Banjaras for transporting grains. In his kingdom, whatever the grains produced for transporting to cities, he used these Banjaras. Emperor Jahangir wrote in his memoirs that the Banjaras carried grain on their bullocks from different areas and sold it in towns. So, in Mughal Emperor time, Jahangir time also, they used these Banjaras. They transported food grain for the Mughal army during military campaigns, for the military purpose also, for the supply of food necessaries to army. The Banjaras helped them. With a large army, there could be 1 lakh bullocks carrying grain. There may be nearly 1 lakh bullocks. See, that means nearly 50,000 carts. 1 lakh bullocks means each cart 2 bullocks means 50,000 carts they used for carrying the grains. Many pastoral tribes reared and sold animals such as cattle and horses to the prosperous people. Some people, not only these bullocks, some of them they reared and sold animals like cattle and horses also to the merchants. Different castes of petty peddlers also traveled from village to village. They made and sold wares such as ropes, reeds, straw matting, and coarse sacks, whatever the things which were used by the common people also. What are they? Ropes, talu, reeds, straw matting, mats like that, and coarse sacks, bags like that. Sometimes mendicants acted as wandering merchants. There were castes of entertainers who performed in different towns and villages for their livelihood. Many of them you have shown, you have seen circus. On that, some people they walk on the wire, balancing them on the wire and moving. Who will do usually those things? Only these tribal people. Banjaras only can perform those acts for their livelihood. This is about their nomadic and mobile people lifestyle, children. Now, changing society, new castes and hierarchies. How Lato changed? Changing society, how? Till now they haven't remained like that. So many changes happened. Changing lives and societies. Changes will come now. It is common. Changes are common in lives. So, in these tribal people also, in some societies, there were also some changes. New castes and hierarchies came. How it was? Let's see. As the economy and the needs of society grew, people with new skills were required. As the societies are developing, with new skills, people also wanted new skills. Smaller castes or jatis emerged within varnas. So, in those varnas, 4 varnas only, small castes and small jatis were emerged. That means came. For example, new castes appeared amongst the Brahmanas. In Brahmanas only, new castes also came. On the other hand, many tribes and social groups were taken into caste-based society and given the status of jatis. In remaining groups also, new groups arrived and they were given the names of jatis. Specialized artisans, smiths. Smiths means you know already. Blacksmith, goldsmith, carpenters, masons like jatis came. Were also recognized as separate jatis by the Brahmanas. Jatis rather than varna became the basis for organizing society. So, for organizing the society, these jatis only they have considered rather than varna. Varna means only 4 groups. Jatis means different subcastes also came. So, on the basis of jatis, they have organized societies. Among the Kshatriyas, new Rajput clans became powerful by the 11th and 12th centuries. In Kshatriyas only, many kings, they have began Rajput clans. The new Rajput clans became powerful. They belonged to different lineages such as Hunas, Chandelas, Chalukyas and others. So, all these dynasties kings came out from the Kshatriyas. They belonged to, some of these two had been tribes earlier. In these dynasties, some of them, they belonged to tribes. But they became powerful, they occupied kings and new dynasties they brought and they became kings. Some of these too has been tribes earlier. Many of these clans came to be regarded as Rajputs. After becoming powerful clans, they were recognized as Rajputs. They gradually replaced the older rulers, especially in agricultural areas. So, after getting wealth and army wealth, they occupied the old jamindars and they have looted, they have captured agricultural areas. Here, a developed society was emerging and rulers used their wealth to create powerful states. See, from tribal families to becoming chief powerful clans, and from powerful clans to Rajputs. That means how quickly the changes emerged. And they have established kingdoms also. The rise of Rajput clans to the position of rulers set an example for the tribal people to follow. So, how the people from tribal people to Rajputs. Rajputs means here they became kings. First of all, from tribal people, what they have become? Chief clans. That means powerful with army. Powerful army. They became chief clans. From chief clans to they occupied agricultural areas. And later they became Rajputs and they established kingdoms. So this style, this process, whatever the process from tribal to Rajputs, this process was modeled to remaining other tribal people, other groups of people also. Yes or not? From one group, from a lower group, going to king's position means it's not a common thing. Gradually, with the support of Brahmanas, many tribes became part of the caste system. So, with the support of Brahmanas, what these Brahmanas will do? Who have more power and wealth, they will prize those people. They gave support to them and many new castes began. But only the leading tribal families could join the ruling class. A large majority joined the lower jatis of caste society. On the other hand, many dominant tribes of Punjab, Sindh and Northwest frontier had adopted Islam quite early. So, some became and joined in these dynasties and kingdoms, and they became the parts of the caste system. And some in West Asia, Northwest place, Punjab and Sindh areas, they were attracted with the Islam culture. They continue to reject the caste system. The unequal social order prescribed by Orthodox Hinduism was not widely accepted in these areas. So, all over India, these different types of caste systems, jatis, varnas emerged. But in Punjab, Sindh and Northwest areas, they were not convinced with this varna system, and they remained as Islams, and they don't accepted these Orthodox Hinduism rules. The emergence of states is closely related to social change amongst tribal people. Two examples of this important part of our history are described below. So, in these tribal people, two societies emerged as powerful kingdoms. What were they? Two tribal societies. What were they? Now see. First one is Gonds. The Gonds. How the lifestyles of Gonds, you will see very detailed. The Gonds lived in a vast forested region called Gondwana, or country inhabited by Gonds. Those living area is called as, their place is called as Gondwana. Their place is called as Gondwana, or the place where the country inhabited by Gonds, where the Gonds are living, in which country they are living, that place was called as Gondwana. They practiced shifting cultivation. Shifting cultivation means taking one land, cutting the trees and burning them and mixing the ash in the soil and cultivating this area. After cultivation, leaving this area and going to other place. That shifting from one place to another place, shifting their agriculture, that is called as shifting cultivation. The large Gond tribe was further divided into many smaller clans. So this Gondwana was divided into many smaller clans. clan had its own Raja or Rai. Each clan has own Raja. About the time that the power of the Delhi Sultans was declining, a few large Gond kingdoms were beginning to dominate the smaller Gond chiefs. As the Mughal kingdom was declining, here these Gondwana societies and Gondwana kingdoms they started rising. The Akbarnama, a history of Akbar's reign, mentioned the Gond kingdom of Garha Katanga that had 70,000 villages. You know, the famous book, in 8th class it will come. Akbar, he has written all his kingdom administrative matters in a book that was named as Akbarnama. In that Akbarnama, one Gondwana society, that was Garha Katanga. Who was the ruler? Garha Katanga. Under him, how many villages? 70,000 villages were under his control. See how much big Gond society that was, Gond kingdom that was. You can observe. This was the example given in the Akbarnama book. Okay. The administrative system of these kingdoms was becoming centralized. The kingdom was divided into Gars. Each Gar was controlled by a particular Gond clan. So, these 70,000 villages were divided into different Gars. And for each clan, there was a particular Gond clan. This was further divided into units of 84 villages called Chaurasi. So, this Gondwana is divided into Gars. And Gars into different clans, and each clan has units. How many units? 84 villages. That is 84 villages. That is a Chaurasi. The Chaurasi was again subdivided into Barhots. Barhots means it was of 12 villages. That means Barhot. First smaller one is Barhot. Barhot means 12 villages. Okay. Can you see? Barhot. Okay. 12 villages. That is Barhot. Okay. This Barhot, 12 sevens are 7 Barhots, a Chaurasi. Chaurasi to these 84 villages. These Chaurasi has one clan. Again these clans under Gars. Okay. Gars to Gondwana. Again I will read out, children. Each Garh was controlled. So each Garh. Okay. Gondwana society to Garh. Garh was divided into clans. Clans were divided into Chaurasis. Chaurasis to Barhats. Okay. This was further divided into units of 84 villages called Chaurasi. Okay. So, Gar was divided into Chaurasis. The Chaurasi was subdivided into Barhats. Chaurasi was subdivided into Barhats, which were made up of 12 villages. Okay. The emergence of large states changed the nature of Gond society. Their basically equal society gradually got divided into unequal social classes. Brahmanas received land grants from the Gond Rajas and became more influential. The Gond chiefs now wished to be recognized as Rajputs. So, Amandas, the Gond Raja of Garha Katanga, this Garha Katanga king, who is he? Amandas. What he has done? He assumed the title of Sangram Singh, Sangram Shah. His son Dalpat married Princess Durgavati, the daughter of Salbahan, the Chandel Rajput Raja of Mahoba. So you can understand that these Rajput clans, they got married. They have given their daughters to these Gond kingdoms also. Why? Because they were fears of these Gond societies. Why? They also rose to big societies and they also became more powerful clans. Dalpat, however, died early. So Garhakatanga's son Dalpat, he married Durgavati. Who was Durgavati? Durgavati, she was the daughter of Rajput Raja. Okay, Chandela Rajput Raja Mahoba. As she married during the early time only, this Dalpat, that means Garhakatanga's son, died. Rani Durgavati was very capable and started ruling on behalf of her 5-year-old son Bir Narayan. As her husband died, she did not sit quiet. Who? This Chandela's daughter. Who? Rani Durgavati. On behalf of her 5 years. By that time, there was no chance to these women. But as her son was very young, 5 years old, she captured the kingdom. She started ruling her kingdom on behalf of her son. Who was her son? He was Bir Narayan. Okay, Bir Narayan. Under her, the kingdom became even more extensive. Though she was a queen, she also extended her kingdom. In 1565, the Mughal forces under Asaf Khan attacked Garhakatanga. A strong resistance was put up by Rani Durgavati. So in 1565, a Garhakatanga Mughal forces under Asaf Khan, Mughal kings, they attacked this Garhakatanga. And Durgavati also fought very strongly. She was defeated and preferred to die rather than surrender, as she was incapable. We can't say she has kept her force, but that force was very big. As she found the chances she is going to defeat, she chosen death rather than surrender to herself to Mughal empress. Her son too died fighting soon after. As her son was young, he also died during the battle time. Garhakatanga was a rich state. It earned much wealth by trapping and exporting wild elephants to other kingdoms. So their manual work was trapping and exporting the wild elephants. When the Mughals defeated the Gonds, they captured a huge booty of precious coins and elephants. As the Mughals occupied this Garhakatanga, they have collected so much booty, that means forest produce, and many elephants. They annexed part of the kingdom and granted the rest to Chandra Shah, an uncle of Bir Narayan. So, after they occupied, they have given a little part to uncle of Bir Narayan to rule that. Despite the fall of Garhakatanga, the Gond kingdom survived for some time. Of course, they have gone under the Mughals, but they have survived for some time. However, they became much weaker and later struggled unsuccessfully against the stronger Bundelas and Marathas. Afterwards, again, Bundelas and Marathas, they started and again fought on these Garhas. So, till then, they survived. So, this was about the Gond society, children. Next, one more example they have given, that is the Ahoms. Who were these Ahoms? Let's see how they have lived. What was the lifestyle? The Ahoms. The Ahoms migrated to the Brahmaputra valley from present-day Myanmar in the 13th century. They created a new state by suppressing the older political system of the Buyans. During the 16th century, they annexed the kingdoms of the Chutias and of Koch Hazau and subjugated many other tribes. So here, these people also, Ahoms also, they subjugated many minor tribal societies and they established the Ahom society. The Ahoms built a large state and for this they used firearms as early as the 1530s. So, using the firearms, they captured many societies. By the 1660s, they could even make high quality gunpowder and cannons. So, these, of course, they were guns, then also they started using guns. They made gunpowder and cannons. At what time? In the 1660s only they have used guns. See how. However, the Ahoms faced many invasions from the southwest. In 1662, the Mughals under Mir Jumla attacked the Ahom kingdom. So, Mughals under the captaincy of Mir Jumla, they have attacked Ahom society. Despite their brave defense, the Ahoms were defeated. Of course, they have this much guns, gunpowder, cannons they used, but they were defeated in the hands of Mughals. But direct Mughal control over the region could not last long. Of course, they were defeated. Again, they got control themselves on the Ahoms kingdom. The home state depended upon forced labor. Those forced to work for the state were called pikes. Those labor were called as, human labor were called as pikes. A census of the population was taken. Each village had to send a number of pikes by rotation. So, they have counted the population and each village have to send these pikes to work under the king. People from heavily populated areas were shifted to less populated areas. Ahom clans were thus broken up. By the first half of the 17th century, the administration became quite centralized. So, from more populated areas to less populated areas, they have shifted the people and clone Ahom clans, they were broken up. By the half of the 17th century, administration became centralized. From the main place, they controlled all the kingdom. Almost all adult males served in the army during war. If war comes means all the male people, they have to go and serve in the war. At other times, they were engaged in building dams, irrigation systems and other public works. If they don't have work means, they don't have to go to war means, they have to work for construction things. What? Construction dams, irrigation works and other public works. The Ahoms also introduced new methods of rice cultivation. Ahom society was divided into clans or khels. There were very few castes of artisans. Here in these very few castes of artisans, because all the people were engaged in agriculture only. So artisans were very less. So, artisans in the Ahom areas came from the adjoining kingdoms. So, artisans from nearby kingdoms, artisans came. A khel often controlled several villages. The peasant was given land by his village community. Even the king could not take it away without the community's consent. So, as they were dependent on agriculture, the society, the community in the village, they used to give lands to the peasants for cultivation. Even the king could not take that land with the permission of the, the king also has to take permission from the society. Then only he can take off the land from the peasant. That much society is that much strong. Originally, the Ahoms worshipped their own tribal gods. During the first half of the 17th century, however, the influence of Brahmanas increased. Temples and Brahmanas were granted land by the king. So, Brahmanas also rose, and for the temples and Brahmanas, the kings used to grant land. In the reign of Sip Singh, Hindustan became the predominant religion. But the Ahom kings did not completely give up their traditional beliefs after adopting Hinduism. Of course, they mingled some of these Ahoms kings, but they adapted Hinduism, but they haven't completely give up their traditional beliefs. That means they preserved their, I have said in the starting only, they have very respect of their traditions and culture. Of course, they adopted Hinduism, but they followed and preserved their traditions also. Ahom society was very sophisticated. Poets and scholars were given land grants. Theatre was encouraged. Important works of Sanskrit were translated into the local language. Historical works known as Buranjis were also written, first in the Ahom language and then in Assamese. So, written works, that means different artistic works also have given importance. Considerable social change took place in the subcontinent during the period we have been examining. Varna-based society and tribal people constantly interacted with each other. This interaction caused both kinds of societies to adapt and change. There were many different tribes and they took up diverse livelihoods. Of course, some development is there, but some societies which were very less powerful, they have adapted very different livelihoods. Over a period of time, many of them merged with caste-based society. After, as the time changing, they also mingle with caste-based society. Why? Because all these things for their livelihood. Others, however, rejected both the caste system and orthodox Hinduism. Some tribes established extensive states with well-organized systems of administration. Some, they organized societies with administrative system. They thus became politically powerful. This brought them into conflict with larger and more complex kingdoms and empires. So, some people want to become kings, some people became artisans, some mingled with caste societies, and some became joined in caste system. But the people who wants to become kings, they got disputes with the neighboring kings and societies. So, this was the lesson, children, tribes, nomads and settled communities. I hope you understood the content. Thank you. Have a nice day.